So the news from DEFCON just keeps coming in, and it keeps giving me a lot of trust issues. Last year it was the hacks of smart cars. This year it's the hacks of smart locks. 2 presentations at this year's security conference say that smart locks might be the dumbest things we're trusting these days. Iain Thomson from the Register is here to talk about a Bluetooth low-energy smart lock. Welcome, Iain.
Hi, Megan. How's it going?
It's going well. Thanks to have you. So you say that if you use the smart Bluetooth locks, you're asking to be burglared. Burgled.
Yes.
Well,
burglared.
Basically, burglarized. I've heard something.
Okay, that works too.
Yeah, basically, it was a fascinating couple of talks. The key one, which really got my attention, was they tested 16 padlocks and door locks and found that of those, only 4 weren't breakable using just couple of $100 worth of kit and publicly available code. And of the 4 that weren't, we've since found out from another presentation, one of those is dodgy as well, and another one can be opened. They've invested in another one. They've invested in this fantastic Bluetooth, security mechanism. Everything's encrypted. It's all perfect for wireless transmission. But the lock itself is so shoddily made that you can just jam a screwdriver in and turn it. So they kind of missed the point on that one.
So you're talking about using a screwdriver, the old-fashioned way of breaking into a lock. But are some of these also remote hacks that you're talking about?
Oh, I mean, the vast majority of them were. I mean, they split down into a couple of areas. First off, there's the simple problem. 4 of these locks actually sent the passwords between the mobile app and the door lock in plain text, which means if you've got a sniffer sitting in a bush by the side of the door, that's it. Your password is now perfectly readable. Another one had encoded the administrator password into the device itself, and a not very imaginative password either, which read, "This is the secret." Others were susceptible to replay attacks, whereby if you actually sniffed and recorded the signal, you could replay it to the lock and then just open the door automatically. Some could be fuzzed, so that you crashed the system, and in those situations, some of these locks just unlocked themselves. And in some, you could actually change the password. The door would automatically lock, and it wouldn't allow you to change the password back until you took the battery out of the device and reset it. Unfortunately, in one of these devices, you can't take the battery out of them, so you might as well just throw away the lock and rip out the section of your door and have to replace it completely.
Wow. Why is there no encryption going on here? I mean, especially with the over-the-air kind of stuff. I mean, it's not that difficult to work in. Encryption works with Bluetooth. Why are they not doing that? Like, at the very least.
Well, yes. I mean, the simple answer comes down to these are very smart locks made by stupid people.
Okay.
One of the presenters postulated that these are either built by established companies who have a lot of money but don't really know that much about encryption, or they're built by security startups which know a bit about encryption but don't have the money to actually implement it. Now, he contacted all the lock makers who he found flaws with, one of whom didn't respond but just shut down their website and carried on selling the locks through Amazon. But one company did actually come back to him and say, yes, we're aware this is a problem. It's going to be quite difficult to use in the real world, however, so we're not going to fix it. And this is exactly the kind of answer that I've seen earlier on this year from SimpliSafe, who do the wireless home locking system, which is easily broken and unpatchable, and they've said they're not going to fix that either. Basically, security is way, way back on the list when it comes to designing an Internet of Things device. What they want is it's got to be easy to use, it's got to be relatively cheap, and people aren't going to get locked out of their houses doing it. So they concentrate on those things rather than the security, which you might think would be higher in the priority list, given this is locks we're talking about, but apparently not. No, security is just something that's an afterthought, a mere bagatelle compared to having a nice flashy device.
So were any of them, did any of them pass the tests? Were there any smart locks that might be recommended?
Yes, we covered it. Master Lock seemed to do quite well. There were, I think it was the Nico Lock did rather well. We've got a full list on the website of stuff that was there. But I mean, the thing is, there are so many of these devices out now because particularly Chinese manufacturers have worked out there is a demand for these devices, and no-name companies are churning them out and selling them on Amazon and other online sources. As one of the presenters said, their manuals look like they've been translated from Chinese to English by somebody who doesn't write English. So there's very little chance for you to actually configure them properly or to get any proper information. about how this is done. And he said, really, I mean, this guy who must have the most long-suffering wife I've ever heard of, because he rigged up like a high-gain antenna and a Raspberry Pi and that sort of thing in the family car and just went war driving for an hour around his neighborhood. And he picked up an astonishing number of easily hackable things. He took his car in to get an oil change at the garage, and when they told him, he called in beforehand and said they said it'll take half an hour. He got there and said it'll take 2. So he thought, right, well, I'm going to be sitting here doing nothing. I may as well just check out. And he found the passcode to the lock of the garage he was in. Now, being a nice chap and wanting to stay within the law, he didn't reset it or scramble the password in any way. But it just goes to show there are an enormous number of these devices out there. They're not properly secured. And with, as I say, $200 worth of kit, anybody can scan them. And we've made it easier for them to do so. Because if you buy any of these systems, or almost any of these systems, the manufacturer, in as well as the lock, or if you've got a wireless home security system, the cameras and all that, they will also almost all give you a little sign to put on your front door, says this house is protected by such and such a system, and window stickers as well. So all you've got to do is go around and say, oh yeah, they're vulnerable, they're vulnerable, they're vulnerable, right, I'll be back later and have their valuables, thank you.
I know the default password for that one. It's probably going to work when I plug it in. Yeah, I mean, I'm torn, because on one hand, absolutely, like if there is the ability to make something like a lock on your door more secure, and especially with technology, I imagine that's pretty, it's pretty possible. We know that, many of the ways that you do that, then you should. At the same time, like, locks on doors aren't necessarily they're not always necessarily there in and of themselves to keep you out. They're there to act as a deterrent. Because where there's a will, there's a way. People get through that door, they either knock it down, or, there are a million different ways you can get through a door, no matter what.
Oh, yes, certainly there are. And by far the easiest method is to go around, chuck a brick in through the back of the window and just climb in that way. But the central point is that, I mean, when it comes to something like door locks, you can get really good quality deadbolt door locks, which you can pick, but you've got to be hanging around there for at least a minute or two, scrambling around with lockpicks trying to get the door open. Now, if you live in a neighborhood like mine, where you've got a fair number of sort of families with stay-at-home parents or older retired couples, we have a very good neighborhood watch system. And if somebody's mucking around with someone's door for more than 30 seconds, questions get asked fairly quickly. The danger of something like this is, once you've got the code, you can look like you live there, because you just go up, you put your phone near the terminal, you press the button, and you're in. And it looks entirely legit. There's none of this brick through the back window. There's none of the trying to pick the lock. It's just one click and in, and that's very, very difficult to fight against.
Yeah,
I would imagine. I mean, some of these locks are also designed. You give each member of the family a different code, and so you could also be able to tell when certain people were home. I mean, I'm talking about hacking someone. You know when the daughter comes home. You know when the dad comes home. I imagine that stuff is accessible as well.
Oh, yes. I mean, in a couple of these locks, they found exactly that data stored in tables within the device. So it gives you a very good, I mean, if you're just going to scan it and actually just find out that table, it gives you a very good time of who's in when the house is unoccupied, when just the kids are around, for example, or when, and what all their individual passwords were. And in this case, it also kept their usernames. So that gives you an additional source of information if you then wanted to use that for either social engineering their passwords in other directions, or seeing if they're using the same password in multiple circumstances. And so, I mean, there was all that information stored on the lock, and just really some of the security here was basic 101. Don't do this. Things like locks demanding just an 8-number password. All you can use is numbers, and you can only do 8 of them, which makes it perfectly easy to brute force. You can do it in minutes. I mean, by and large, considering the amount of information that some of these things are storing about us and our families, well, not me personally, I don't use the damn things, but about those people who do use them, then you should be very, very worried. And these things are very hard to patch. The manufacturers don't seem interested in patching them, and in some cases just physically can't because of the hardware and software involved.
Well, I love technology, but you know what can't be hacked? My 100-pound dog. My pit bull mix.
I don't know. A nice T-bone steak might hack that dog.
T-bone steak with a couple of sleeping pills in there. You never know. It's just like...
True. Oh well.
Dang it! Everything is hackable.
Well, I mean, on a fundamental level, everything is. But some of these locks are very expensive. They're billed as the high-tech security system of the future, and they're patently not. I mean, it's just, yes, if somebody really wants to get into your house, they always will. But doing something like this, refusing to fix the flaws, having people advertise that they're using dodgy kit in the front of their house, I think it's a very serious situation. I certainly wouldn't be installing any one of these anytime soon.
Sure.